All right.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Mastermind, Body, and Spirit Show. I'm your host, Matt Belair. Today's guest is a blogger, writer, speaker, performer, and founder of Soulogy and Soulogy One Studios. After going on a 2-year spirit walk upon his awakening, he began working on providing a platform for all universal voices, manifesting into a 24/7, 365 continuous video cast with multiple channels, which is his passion. Welcome to the show, Todd Medina.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on. And let me just publicly apologize to Katie Indicrow because I had a show scheduled. For her, I forgot about this one. So anyway, here we go.
Yeah, no, well, it's good that you did that. I know what the scheduling conflict is like. So, you've been putting a lot of work in recently, and I knew when somebody brought you to my attention, it was only a matter of time that we got to share some space and a dialogue because you've been in it. So, for those of you who don't know you from my field of things, can you give us a little bit of a background on just who you are and what you've been up to and how you came to the conversations and the things you're working on now?
Okay, I can give a quick summary. So like a lot of us, I woke up in May of 2011. Ended up going on a spirit walk for about 2 years and went homeless by my own choice, from that higher calling. And I was given the name Soulogy a few months into it, the other side of truth. Archangel Michael Essence gave it to me and said, we'll give you the pieces, figure it out. So I walked the streets for a couple of years and I wrote on a flip phone. And then I came off the streets and I started putting them to images and created a Soulogy group early on. And I just started expressing my own journey as the individual goes, so goes the collective, and try to, just state what was happening with me and hopefully help somebody. And it just kept going and other people started doing it. Soulogy became a place where people, talked about everything and anything. Everybody was accepted. And then I got this Soulogy One Studios thing, which was a musical, or the artistic arm, the expression of Soulogy, and started doing the same thing there. Started producing other people, writing Soul Speaks. It's not singing, it's not rapping, it's right in the middle. And so just putting frequencies together, an ever-expanding vibration. And then the thing with the primary broadcasting that we do, which is Soul Speaks 5D, it's a conversation with whoever we're talking to. That started about the summer of 2017. My divine partner came to visit for the first time here in the U.S. and I started doing some talks. And then she said, you ought to name it Soul Speaks 5D, and this would be the gist of it, which is a conversation about real-time intel and the ascension, this transition that we're in. And so I just started going after people, and we're at almost 500 episodes now in I guess it's about a year and a half. So we've been really blessed with a lot of great people, a lot of great brothers and sisters, a lot of people putting their energy into Soulogy and the things that we're doing, and it's just been one escalating, elevating fairy tale. So that's the short version.
Amazing. Holy crap. Okay. Yeah. Cause I've been working super hard and I think in 3 years, I'm at like an episode 180 or something. So that's an extraordinary amount of work. I know that you have these conversations a lot. I guess the first question that I'm curious about is, when you had that like awakening experience, can you speak about life before and life after? And so maybe if you could speak to yourself on the other side when you were quote unquote asleep, or maybe just not following your own path, or however you want to word it, what advice you would have gave to yourself that would have made life a little bit better or easier or different?
Well, I think the advice would have been listen to that still small voice within. I think it's always been present. Most of the people I talk to on the show say I had it, then I shut it down, and then it came back. I would say it was kind of like that for me. I was going through a lot of turmoil, which was really just the universe setting me up to put me where I needed to be. So there was a lot of physical, mental, emotional traumas going on, but spiritually I was hanging on. So I was hearing the voice, but then everything turned upside down. So that was the before. And then there was a demarcation line, which was basically May 30th, 1:11 in the morning. My higher self appeared to me in the trees with the apparition of the the face of the cosmic Christ and started talking to me. I went homeless for about 6 weeks. About 6 weeks later, I went homeless, and I just started tuning in. I had developed this constant communion, and and even through that process of going through shadow work or inner work, I still was very stubborn in following and having the spiritual confidence to follow that voice. But as time went on, the universe kept putting me in that beautiful universal isolation where it's just you in that constant communion. And I had no choice but to keep going. And so many times I ended up like in this island in and of myself, and I'd be standing there going, okay, what do I do next? Like the future's out there, the past is out there, the parallels are out there, but you're on this island all by yourself. And I'd always get an answer, and I just keep on going. So things are starting to fall in place now. So my advice to myself then would have been, shut up and listen. Something like that.
I like that. Well, I just wrote something the other day on Instagram, and it was just along the lines of having that inner voice, that the inner voice comes from the heart. The heart's connected to spirit. And that's really who you are. And what happens, I think, is that our logical mind is conditioned not to listen to that inner voice because we can't see the end of the road. We can't see how things are going to work out, right? Because our consciousness is responsible for our survival. And so that means we need to make money to eat, right? And so it just wants to keep us safe. But, really taking that leap to listen to that inner voice, because you're the only one who can hear it, and you're the only one who knows what it's saying, and you're the only one who knows if you're listening to it or not. And then sometimes you might get a little bit of a life explosion to give you more of a kick in the butt to move towards that feeling. So, all right, let's go this way with it. You talk about, and you can feel free to throw in a comment on that. There's a lot of talk in some of the circles about like ascension and the great awakening, right? You went from a non-awake state to quote unquote awake state. What do you feel is going on the planet right now? And how do we get involved with, let's say, a movement or an idea or a culture that is more around collaboration, open-mindedness, connection to source, and whatever that means for you?
I think that's a great question. Number one. Number two, I think the first place you start is right back to what you just said, which is listen to that inner guidance. It's as far as what we do. I mean, it's not protesting or boycotting or marching. It's actually through the individual expressions that we have that are driven by that voice, because this voice is telling all of us to do something. There's missions within the mission, there's the overall mission, and there's all different types of explanations for that, but they pretty much describe the same thing. Something's happening on this earth. It happens through the individual. As my divine partner says, the road to oneness is through individuality. And I think another point I would bring up, I think it was, I don't know if it was Shekinah Rose, I think it was Shekinah Rose, talked about the internet, talked about how it is a physical manifestation. I would call it the highest physical manifestation, the ethers in this realm, and how it was set up as part of the control mechanism, a false matrix, if you will, but that it also allows us the opportunity through these expressions, through shows like this, through posts, through videos, whatever we do, to make an imprint on the divine matrix. And I've seen that. I don't know if I explained that too well, but getting back full circle to answering your question, I think what we do is we follow that inner voice. I do believe that there's a huge throat chakra igniter in this realm, something about integrating the physical senses with the non-physical. And when we state our truth, whatever that may be, from where we stand from the center of our heart, we make a huge solar, cosmic, orgasmic, gigantic wave nuclear blast throughout this whole earth, but also through the whole universe. So I think that's what I would recommend to anybody, and that's what I encourage with anybody. That's why I love the shows that you do. I enjoy the shows I do because they're full of activations and code exchange. And this is how it happens. It happens at the gut level, one-on-one, mano-a-mano. And then where there's two or more, it starts to take on that Tesla thing. Because on this side of the awakening, it's not 1 + 1 = 2. It's 1 + 1 = 3, 6, 9, 12. And then that Tesla thing takes off, and we start seeing Merkabahs flying around everywhere.
That's a great closing, man. I loved all that. I think my favorite part was was the idea that when we speak our truth from our heart, and let's say with somebody who might be a little bit in the ego or in, let's say, the illusion. When I say illusion, I mean you're caught up in cultural ideas, cultural norms. You act a certain way because that's just what culture does. You do these things because that's what everybody's doing, but you're not doing it because you actually really want to do it. And so what can happen if you're really caught up in it is you change your identity, you change your mask, you change your personality to like a chameleon to fit all these different ways. And even if it's slight, but when you actually tune into who you are, your heart, your truth, whatever it is, it could be totally bonkers to somebody else, but you're just saying it because that's like who you are. It resonates throughout the entire universe. And I have heard that, before with teachings with David Lombard, just basically your thoughts and your actions and your feelings and your words are getting shot out to the universe for all beings connected. And I saw something else when I was I'm reading Psycho-Cybernetics right now. And it talked about, what's that?
Maxwell Maltz. That's an old book.
Yeah. Apparently the original one. It's so good. And then I was reading, I was like, this is so much better. It's like so much better than the book that I wrote. It's so good. But it's just different. But it just talked about how your individual consciousness is connected to the sea of consciousness, like a wave in an ocean. And I loved all that. So maybe you could speak more on it, or I can ask you a question because I had one.
Well, yeah, absolutely. No, I think you just restated it perfectly. It doesn't make sense. I just came up with, if it doesn't make sense, do it. And I'm talking, of course, satirically towards the viewpoint of society or the 3D illusionary realm that we all built in perfect divine order, so we would be in this situation to expand the universe. But no, I think you stated it perfectly. What's your question? What's your question you had for me?
Awesome. Appreciate that, man. Okay. So you talked about the divine matrix, which I think is a really fascinating word. So I'm curious if you can distinguish between the divine matrix and the matrix, or however you would put that.
Well, I think if you use the internet as an example, as a representation of the to put a little backdrop to the question. So the everything that was in this realm, rewritten histories, hidden histories, we can go down the list. We don't need to know all that stuff anymore. We all figured it out. Was designed to control us. So you can't think for 1 second that the internet wasn't designed to control us. They've had the esoteric knowledge. They put it out there and manipulated it. But also we were raising our consciousness with the help of the universal as a collective, so they can't keep up with us. You can't keep the truth down. So my point is although they tried to use it to, get our identities, get our information, know where we're at, whatever the case is, project propaganda. Probably 1 in 2 of every light worker sites is probably an ops, CIA psyops or something like that. But the point is, that's the false matrix. The false matrix is built on a fear-based conditioning, and there is a death, there is a law you can break, there is this label you have to uphold, or you're not a good person. All these things are meant to keep us away from who we really are, what we're part of. So the holy divine matrix is that energy that so many people have discovered on the internet over the years, and began with, you got on the internet, you started making friends, you message people, somebody sent an image, you feel the energy of it, you feel the energy of their words, you feel the energy of what's being said between the lines of their words. We all felt this energy. We felt it from expressions. We might watch a show like this and we get energy from it. It's activations, it's codes and all that. So that's the holy matrix. And the way it's fed is through our divine love for ourselves and for humanity. Because when you think about it, in the 3D realm, it's service to self in the low vibrational sense. In the 5D plus, or the new earth, whatever you want to call it, service to self really means service to higher self, or service to all of our highest infinite aspects, or however you want to put it. But it's simultaneously you're serving the collective. It's one and the same. So when you put your heart out there, and I've seen people in Soulogy do it over the years, saying, hey, I had an ET encounter. Hey, these energies are kicking my butt. Hey, this happened or that happened. But like you said, from their perspective, that time, if it's a truth bomb, it's a love bomb. It's a sovereignty bomb. It's the true nature of what we really are and where our power is. It's innocent. It's genuine. It's childlike wonder sometimes. I mean, it's pure love. And when you do that, there's some type of an alignment with the individual and their intention to really help somebody, you know. So the Holy Matrix is probably indescribable, really in human terms, human words, but it is the energy that we have never been able to see in ourselves, and we're seeing it now. We're seeing this happen. There's many people talking about the same things. There seems to be an integration of what people are receiving in transmissions, downloads, and channelings. And there's many examples of that. And really, to me, that this is all escalating rapidly. And I think there's going to be a huge change in what our shared consciousness, our shared existence is over the rest of this year.
That's a really beautiful answer, man. I love that. I think one of my favorite bits was the Holy Matrix, Divine Matrix is fed through love for self. And, you know, the expression that you can't give unless you have an overflowing cup. And it starts from that self-love and that self-worth and that self-understanding. So that way you can give that water, that love, that overflowing energy to another person. Because if you don't have any extra, as I say, water to give, and you're running a marathon in the heat, you're of no good. And you're also of no good to yourself, because then someone's going to need to help you because you're not taking care of yourself. And the other thing that you kind of mentioned in there that I wanted to touch on was these interesting experiences, let's say experiences that we don't understand, or even to express honestly in a safe space. You know, it's like, hey, I've had this experience that I don't understand. And rather than people culturally normally accepting that idea, we're kind of taught to bring those weird stories and suppress them. But what I've noticed when you share a story around a campfire, and even, you know, if people don't know me, they don't know I'm strange right away. I just let it sit for a little bit. But I'll offer just a story, and we'll kind of go around. And once they see it's a safe space, they're like, you know what? There was this one time where this happened, and I've never told anyone, or I've only told one other person, because culturally it's like, this is what's real. I tell you what's real. And it's like this weight that's not even a real thing. So this is an allowing an expansion, and it begins with you.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. I mean, you know, I've watched Soulogy. We've always had very few restrictions on the group, because that's really where it started, was the group, March the 10th of 2012. And it's always been that it's a place where you're supported, you're not judged. I mean, obviously we've got a few dregs of this and that. We all do in organizations or energy, as the false matrix falls away and the false aspect of us falls away individually. But my point is it's a place where you're supported. You can talk about anything. People have talked about all kinds of stuff on there. And it is liberating. You know, when we speak the truth, something is released and cured and healed in us. And like you said earlier, everything we do, you know, going back to psycho-cybernetics and Maxwell Maltz, and I read that book in 1985, probably. Great book. But the individual has this macro effect on the universal, you know, called the flower of life. This is where I think we totally underestimated the power of one unique and equal souls, that we actually have an impact that's phenomenal. We could speak our truth to the universe in solitude, and we impact this entire divine matrix that we're talking about. We could do a video expression from the heart, and the same thing occurs. I've seen it happen so many times, and I've seen so many people come into the Soulogy group and do this and become great poets and become just good writers and put these incredible images together that don't even need words. There's all kinds of expressions happening, and they're increasing. But there's also coming to the surface what I would call universal language, universal expression that's materializing in the expressions of individual people. I'm talking about light language. I'm talking about graphical interpretations of light language. I'm talking about people, which I've been open about. My partner and I, we've had probably about 5 or 6 experiences, visitations from star family. Some we would call invisible, some we would call materialized. Okay, we were receiving communications, visitation, and instructions, and other people around the world talking about the same subject. A lot of people bringing up lately Blu-rays, Avalon, the Christ Magdalene bloodline. A lot of transmissions are coming in, and they are the same thing that somebody else is getting, just being said a little bit differently. So there's something else in the air here, and I think that that is the same vibration of telepathy, intuition, teleportation by location. And these are the things that we're not just remembering who we are, what we're part of, but also we are starting to recall our supernatural skills and abilities. And that's really how we live and where we came from. I got a little off tangent there, but
Nah, it's epic, man. I love all that stuff. And I want to go into all that stuff. Okay. So where I was curious about is, yes, I want to dive into that right after this question. What, if somebody is seeking, right? You know how you were kind of saying, like, some people, there's a light worker website, then one might be psyops, or we're basically in this information overload where there's so much out there and you're trying to figure it out. How do you, or what advice would you give to separate the nonsense from the non-nonsense? Because one of the ways that I put it in this space, because all of a sudden the last, I would say, year is like, it's just going, overtly getting bigger. I can't remember what the word is for it, but it's exponentially getting bigger. So consciousness and spirituality is nothing, and then all of a sudden 5-10 years ago with 2012 it starts to become a little something, and then now exponentially we're on this rocket ship, and some people are picking up that rocket ship, and it's good, but I kind of see it as martial arts where a master is in it for 20 years, and it's not 20-30 years, and it's not just about beating the crap out of somebody. There's a lot of these skills and these nuances and these educations that it takes a while to be a master. So when you're new, you're not really able to distinguish between a white belt and a black belt. And sometimes people are saying that they're a black belt, but they're a white belt. So then when you're following that path, you don't get a little bit result. You're not really sure what's credible. So then you're like, you know what? I don't even want to do this because I tried it. It didn't work. And I look like a butthead.
Yeah. Well, that's a great question and observation. I mean, there's a lot of things to that. One of them I would say is that it's all about intention. Intentions of heart of your intentions, and if you're coming from that place of unconditional love, reaching for the purest intentional expression you can do, or have, or be, you can't go wrong. That's that truth bomb you're talking about, the love bomb you're talking about. But also see that we've kind of two things I bring up. One is that sometimes what gets you to a certain point isn't going to get you to the next place. I think as we came out of this semi-awareness dream state, hey, something's going on, there was still that yogi guru thing going on. So there was people that were kind of ahead of the curve, but they were taking a lot of stuff from intellect, not infinite intelligence. So there's a difference between intelligence and intellect. So I think that's natural. There's no judgment there. But I think people start to get to a point now where they're realizing they have all the information. They can actually link to infinite intelligence and pull anything they want from anywhere. And so that's happening. The other thing I would mention is that when you receive powerful transmissions, channelings, downloads, especially if you've done it for years and years, it's a very, very it's a tightrope with the ego, and the ego is the flip side of the soul. It's nothing to be afraid of. It's just not meant to be in command. It's meant to be in the passenger seat. It's meant to be a red flag and say, hey, there's a dog in the middle of the road, or whatever the case is. But I think it's powerful. It's a challenge to the ego. The higher your soul goes, the higher your ego goes. So you got to keep it in check. And like you said earlier in the show, it's all back to the individual introspection, individual dialogue that we have in our head, individual communion with the universal, individual intuition, and it's our own journey. So I see this need for external information, gratification, fulfillment, lessening, and I see more and more people going inside. And I think as far as to your question of how do you discern, really, I think you pay attention to your gut. Those little things that just pop in your head. I think we are starting to listen to it, and we are starting to follow it more and more. So I think that's just trust yourself. To thine own self be true. That's what this whole trip's about. Self-reliance of the soul. You handle your shift, I'll handle my shift, and we'll meet in the middle. That's another way to put it.
That's awesome, man. I agree with your answer. It's very beautiful and very practical. And that's what I think the same thing as well. It's your own, we're all doing it in our own way. We all have to make that jump ourselves. And when you make the jump, or you're at least trying to, you mentioned another really great point with the intention. If your intention is pure, you can't go wrong. If you're intending to help, if you're intending to learn, if you're intending just to share, right? Like with those videos you talked about on your group of somebody going through something, and then they share it authentically, you know, in their mind, that might be thinking, you know, I'm not good enough. Nobody's going to care about this. Everybody's doing it. You know, I'm a loser, which we do to ourselves for whatever reason. Right. And then they share it. Then all of a sudden, maybe if it's just one person out there is like, you know what? I went through that exact same thing. That helped me. Thank you so much. And that person has the pull. And really what they're doing, what each person is doing, is they're sharing their shift. They're sharing their evolution from a place of authenticity. And that is really powerful stuff. They're not saying, you know, I'm not, you know, now I don't know everything. I'm not a guru and I haven't figured it out. But, you know, this happened and that's kind of the difference now. And I think that's a really big and powerful thing to do, just to share honestly with that intention. Do you want to add on?
Yeah, and I've seen people do that. I mean, I've done videos. I've done over 3,000 videos, and I started out, you know, in my studio listening to guidance, not being a very functional 3D human being, but doing my thing. And I would just, you know, turn on some music, and you know, I was in my studio downstairs where I lived and slept and ate and everything, and I would just start talking. You know, whatever was on my mind, whatever I was going through, you know, shadowed, but coming from a pure heart or pure intention, trying to heal myself and obviously heal the collective somehow, some way. But yeah, I think it's it's powerful. And I've seen people just get up and dance, or just do a song driving down the road, or do a post from the heart, or whatever the case is. And again, it's all that truth, that authenticity, raw, real. And that's what activates people. I think the other thing too I'd mention is the stories. We know we have memories of future stories, past lives, parallel lives, whatever you want to call it. The universe speaks to each one of us in a way we can understand. You know, for some people, it's not going to be the cosmic Christ appear in the trees talking to me, which is an apparition from my higher self looking at me. It's me looking at me. It's the universe talking to me. Everybody gets communicated to by the universe in their own way. So the stories, you know, was I, you know, born, or was I so-and-so in a past life, or was I the child of a famous religious icon or spiritual icon? All these things, they are code. They are a methodology for the universe to communicate to us, to open up codes within ourselves. And I think the important thing is that we leave all of this stuff behind now, because we're here right now. We're divine human souls. We know what the gig is up. We know what went on here. We don't have to know the specific details. It doesn't matter who's got the history, right? What we know is what we are. We are eternal. We cannot be killed. We cannot be controlled, no matter what it looks like. And the more power we give to our personal sovereignty out of service of love to ourselves and the collective, the quicker and faster this thing grows. And let's get to the party. So I'd put it. You know?
I wanted like a mic drop sound.
Boom.
Yeah, I 100% agree with all that. And I like how you talked about your experiences, like saying, you know, that's how it represented to me. I was recently on the Leak Project and shared an experience where Thoth, however people keep telling different ways. Yeah. I don't know. I say Thoth.
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah. You know, and it was super interesting, but I'm like, it's not about that experience, although that's interesting. You know, I think that people sometimes can get caught up on like, oh my goodness, there's this metaphysical experience. And when I was on this track, when I was younger, that's all I wanted. All I wanted was, you know, Jesus Christ or angels or Buddhas to materialize in front of me so I could know that like this dimension was beyond that. But meanwhile, I knew it inside. I knew there was more. So I was curious if you could maybe share a little bit on what you feel the difference, like the differences in living in a 3D reality and the potential, living in a 5D reality and the potentials of what's possible. And then I'm also personally curious, when, you know, Jesus, the cosmic Christ, came to you, what did he say to you? What was the communication? What was the knowing?
I can tell you exactly what it was. So I've been going through this serious escalation for a few years. Financial, I won't get into the details, but, six-figure income, big family. There was a sickness in the family. There was energy in the family. I mean, I hate to try to describe it in human terms, but the bottom line was it was just an escalation, and I knew it couldn't go on. I was hearing spirit. I was reaching out, and so on. But so it all culminated this one night. Been through like the darkest 7 or 8 days with my whole family energy. There was some rough stuff happening. And so I had started at 49 years old to teach myself how to dance to hip hop electronic music in the backyard, right? My patio backed up to a cemetery. They had just bought some land, but they hadn't really cleared it. And there was all these big trees, right? So I'm out there dancing for a couple hours, my shadow against the fence to Kid Cudi and Big Boy. I had 2 CDs I got from the library because I didn't have internet. And so at 1:11, and I knew that because I'd gotten a text from my wife at the time, "Are you coming upstairs?" And it was 1:10. I put that down. I look up into the trees and I see this big light, like a I don't know, like a star coming in to crash into you. And so as I was looking at it, I started to see the face very clearly of Jesus, but I knew it wasn't like Jesus in the Bible. It was the cosmic Jesus. And I'm looking up at him, and he's laughing, right? He's laughing like a parent would laugh at a kid who's taking something too seriously. And he looks at me and says, "What are you so worried about?" And I'm like, and just for the record, his lips weren't moving. It's just straight telepathy, right? But very clear. I could see everything from his neck up. Very shiny teeth, shiny eyes, like piercing through me, the whole face, the lines of the face. And I said, "What are you talking about, man?" I mean, I'm over here on my last leg. I mean, I just, and at that point, he said to me, "I don't know what you're worried about. I've been standing over your family for 2.5 years." Well, 2.5 years earlier to the day, uh, my wife at the time had taken 50 Tylenol PMs and tried to kill herself and died and came back to life. And that's a whole nother spiritual story. But, and I was just like, wow, wow, you're right. And this wave from like the crown down, really like a plasma wave, came down my whole body and even my energy field. And it was just peace and love and like total knowing. And so I was like, wow, yeah, you're right, And I looked back up at the trees and he's laughing harder. That's how the universe teaches, right? You got to be able to laugh at everything. So I said, "Well, what's up with that?" He says, "Well, get ready." He said, "Get ready because everything's fixing to flip upside down. And get ready. You're the one of the unshakable faith. Just remember, you will never be alone and you'll never be forsaken." And it was like you could have said, "Hey, pass the butter." It was that calm and that simple. And I went upstairs for the last time with my family and went to bed. The next day, everything flipped upside down. So that's what he said to me. I forget what the other part of your question was.
That's an amazing story. Well, it's secondary to that now, but I was talking about the difference between the 3D and then the 5D, if you can distinguish those.
Yeah, I can give you an example through my journey.
Sure.
Obviously, in the first 2 years, walking the streets and just living like an adept, and just every day I would get up and know I'd find something to eat, know I'd find a little work to make some money or whatever the case is, place to hang my head, while I was doing the things I was doing, which was like deep, deep shadow work, inner work. But I saw the magic. So the magic there was the communication and this voice that could not be denied and this whole feeling and everything. So then I came off the streets and I started to put together Soulogy and I started interacting with people. So I became a little bit 3D there, but most of my interactions were online and there was a lot of 5D energy. So I was still connected to that 5D, still connected to the infinite intelligence. But then I started to go out into the world, which was in October 13, 2016. I left my house again. And that's almost 2 years ago now. I left everything behind and I started this journey, which some people might call grid work. I wasn't consciously going and burying things and doing stuff like that, but I was going to all these places on a wing and a prayer, on a wing and a prayer. And I started to see the magic. I saw the lower energies happen around me. I was observing myself, trying to deal with it. This is a whole process. It just continues and continues and continues. But at the same time, I was saying, what do you want me to do? How am I going to do this? So I'll give you an example. I went to Arkansas for a couple of months and stayed with a sister and made some music and expanded the music side of Soulogy. And then the next thing I know, it's 2:00 in the morning and I'm walking to a convenience store. That's the bus station in Fort Smith, Arkansas. And I got enough money to buy a ticket to go to New York City, where I never wanted to go. And I'm being told you got to go to New York City. So there's a lot of light workers, grid workers will tell you, just do it. I get on the bus, $27. I'm documenting everything. I'm not asking people for any donations or anything like that. I'm just saying, hey, I'm going to New York. I don't know what's happening. It's all going to happen. Speak what you seek. And by the time I got there, I'd gotten over $1,000 from people sending money and donations. Keep going. So I see the magic there, and I'm this 5D chord of a link to the magic, but at the same time trying to navigate the 3D. As time went on, another year or so goes by. My divine partner came last year for 12 weeks, 10 weeks. She came this year. We just said goodbye temporarily a couple of days ago at the airport. She's back home in Australia for a few weeks. And I see all these things happen. I see this explosion of Soul Speaks 5D. I see this explosion of divine love between her and I. We had this incredible first event over in Andover, New Jersey on the 11th of June. The next day we have a divine union ceremony. The next day we have an incredible broadcast with Unity Grace. And I just see all this magic happening, and it covers all aspects of the individual man's personal life, which is to include what we call money or resources or a place to live. I'm still in this space where in the 3D it will tell you that you have guarantees. It will tell you this is a contract, this is your home, this is a marriage license, you're married, this is your job, you get paid, whatever. It will tell you have these guarantees, and there's no guarantees at all. It's all a bunch of BS. In the 5D, there are no guarantees, but it's a beautiful space. It's a free, open, sovereign space that you create in the moment. So every day you're attached to the day, to the moment, to what can I do right now in this moment, talking to Matt, is express myself and align myself. And that, when I do that, it takes care of everything around me. It takes care of everything. It takes care, but it's not like the 3D. So how do you do it? If it doesn't make sense, do it. Listen to that voice. If you feel moved to do something, do it. This is how the magic works. That 3D part of it says, well, what am I going to do about this? And what am I going to do about that? Those thoughts are going away from me. I can't explain it fully, but I can tell you that I'm watching it happen and have been watching it happen in my life and other people's lives over the last few months.
Said a lot of amazing stuff, man.
I'm just spitting out whatever comes.
Good. I agree. Well, okay, so much stuff came up, but the ender, what came up for me, I just spent the day with David Lombert Senepas, who's the native elder of the Mi'kmaq Nation, and I've come up to the summer to train with him. He's one of the most gnarly human beings I've ever met. Spent the first 26 years of his life on a mountain learning from elders, over 600 elders. And his teachings are so simple. Some of them are his math is advanced, his technology is advanced, and it goes wild there. But the teachings are simple. And one of the things that we were talking about yesterday, I was chatting to him, and he talked to me about need versus want. Yeah. And he's like, what do you need? He's just like, do you have food? I was like, yeah. He's like, is water dripping on your head? As in, like, are you indoors? He's like, yeah. And then he goes, well, he's like, well, you can be content with whatever you have. But oh crap, I can't remember where I was going with it, but that was the basic thing, is that we're not going to be like forsaken. Like, even when you were homeless, you were taken care of by this big energy. You're not going to die. And then the other thing that came up was Alan Watts, he talks about once you know you're going to die or your body's going to die, life either becomes a serious game or it becomes a play. You can enjoy it. You can have faith. You can kind of move towards this. And you're right about the no guarantees, right? We sign the contract, so it says this is the thing, but really that's the thing sucking you into that distraction a lot of the time, because you're kind of doing everything opposite. Everyone's going to tell you, no, don't do this. This doesn't make any sense. But even you being homeless and doing all these things, listening to this guidance, it's all working out. You always had food. You always had water. You always had shelter. But you know that you're making a difference to what you want to create, and it feels aligned to you. And that's honoring yourself and your own growth.
Yeah. And I think, too, that, you have to look at and I'll give you my situation again because that's the only way I can explain it. So you know, you're connected to the 5D. You're still dealing with 3D stuff. You know, at the same time, you're not allowing that 3D stuff to dominate your mind. You're holding space for where you're going, which takes some, let's say, 3D action. So if you look at my situation, I'm recently in the 3D married, okay, in the etherical divine union. We're not together. We live in different countries, or we're from different countries. So you've got visa, passport things. I came to Houston to get my birth certificate and to get my passport and to take the next step of reuniting again permanently, somehow, some way. There's laws and different things, statutes in this country. There's laws and statutes in Australia that apply. You know, how do you do it? Da, 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 da. I think you have to take some steps. So as you're connected to that 5D, it's almost like 3 phases. One's 3D to 5D transition, and one straight 5D, right? So those are like the 3 phases, or the 3 steps, or the 3 places we can be in this transition. And I see that the 5D is like this. So if I'm going to make these 3D actions, these energetic expressions, impressions onto the holy matrix, okay, as I express my individuality, as Maxwell talks about the power of the individual on the macro, as I do that, these things that I can't see are occurring, right? So all these things that I'm doing in an effort to materialize my life and my loves and my wants, or however you want to put it, these other things are happening by virtue of coming from my heart space. So it's a little bit tricky to me. It's a little bit easier every day, but at the same time, as a soul, I say these laws are lawless. There are no borders. There is no color. There is no creed. And I have to hold that integrity and maintain that truth to myself as I navigate the 3D and say, oh, I got to go fill this form out or fill that form out, or whatever the case is. It's not very easy. That's how you end up overbooking on a schedule, because it is a trick. It's a trick to drive a car. It's a trick to go to the grocery store. It's a trick to go into a government office and fill something out and talk to a government employee, you know, because it is the dregs of the 3D, and it is difficult because it's been such in our face with the 5 senses that, you know, it's a little bit, you let go of a little bit, you let go of a little bit, you let go of a little bit, but you don't let it control you, you know.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I do think that there is a middle ground and a phase. We are operating in just physical reality. You know, you have to do the physical things. And I think really the idea, and what I was getting at, is like the belief systems, the ideas, because it's really the thought and the energy you give it, the importance you give it, you know, let's say 5D or spiritual realm or cosmic realm or eternal realm, that 5D, that energy is the predominant thing. And you're down here and you've got to problem solve and navigate and stop at the red light because you're in the reality. But that has less weight to what the most important thing is. And what's kind of happening on the society level is we've got it reversed. We have the illusion as the highest value. And that's all the switches, because what we're doing is trying to navigate this. And when I was talking about David, what I wanted to bring up, I forgot to say, was I asked him, I was like, do our words enslave us? He's like, yes. He's like, obvious. He's just like, you ask a question and you ask spirit for help, something you need, or like, you know, you want. And if you want to express here, you're allowed to, you know, have a vehicle, you're allowed to have a house, you're allowed to have those things. But once you put out the request, he's like, you spend 50 to 80% of your thoughts at least trying to figure out how to do it. When really, if you trusted fully, you would just move towards it. And then that kind of makes me think about, okay, obviously I got to take action, but really what's happening is I'm spinning all this mental chatter on, rather than just flowing through the experience. And like you yourself went to the maxed out version of homelessness and just watched how the universe took care of you, made sure that you were supported. And then you're like, whoa, I know that I'm supported. So you can go to another level. So I was curious if you wanted to add on, like, kind of like, you know, 3D and 5D, like belief structures, and like, what do you see as possible? Like in the 5D, I see it as collaborative. You go from competition to collaboration. You go for, you know, honoring self-expression, kindness, compassion, happiness for self and other. You know, then we can go into teleportation, you know, aliens, all that kind of stuff. And I kind of see it a little bit of a utopia, but really, if anyone wants to put a frame to it, I would say, what Atlantis was. And David, in his culture, being native, has a very different view on what Atlantis was. They believe it was actually a ship, and there were other ships. And this is in their culture, apparently over 20,000 years old. And Clifford Mahoody's going to come on, has the same thing. I talked to him at a conference in Sedona. I was like, oh my goodness, you guys are saying the same thing. So whether it was a place or ship, it doesn't really matter. But the idea was, in one of the podcasts, he said like the social norms were put on this big pillar that everybody could see. And it was basically like kindness, tolerance, compassion, community, and everybody could see it, and just don't go do harm. And that's kind of how I see things working out, where everybody has food, water, shelter. It's about being the best version of what we can be. And I think that what's happening now is we're so competitive that we're squashing each other rather than lifting each other up. And even if that were our switch, even if that were the only thing that we did, everybody just tried to be supportive of one another, everything else that is an apparent problem in the 3D would just disappear just on that bit of energy exchange, because we would come together and we would figure it out.
Yeah. Well, like begets like, and belief systems. So you said there's two different belief systems, or however you phrase that. So, I got a good friend, Lavelle Zimmerman. A lot of people know him in the Lightworker circles. He's been out there for a few years, and we do some stuff together. And the other day, he said, and again, there's double, triple contexts to anything we say or do. That's why language it's important what we say and how we say it. Again, it's the intention though. So he says belief is just another form of, what does he say? Belief is a form of resistance. In other words, there are no absolutes we can lay down. Morgan and I just went through this morning. She's just now back home. We talked for the first time. And we said, hey, let's do this. This seems to be what Spirit's telling us. Let's do this as far as where we come together or how we come together. And we started talking about the details, or I did. Well, She's like, no. Let's not talk about that. So it's almost like where you're going, if you want to put it in human linear terms, or you could say, I'm holding that space. This is the space. This is my masterpiece. And the details will kind of happen for you, present themselves for you, and you'll see them in synchronicities and just knowings, okay, this is what I need to do. So I think that is important, because in the 5D, it is very important what we say. If we're saying, I got to go to work, if we're saying, I got to do this for my family member because I'm this to them, I'm this label to them. Do you really? Do you really? Why are you where you're at? Why are you where you're at? Has this illusion got you by the butt and you don't know it? We all have these continuous multiple awakenings and epiphanies and revelations as we expand our sight, and our ability to see what's happening expands. So we find out new things. We see new shadows. We see new patterns. We see new behaviors that we hadn't seen before. And we start to shift out of that. Part of that has to do with what we say. And I agree with you. Collaboration's huge. Another aspect of 5D, as I see it right now, is that obviously we're not just human beings. We're multidimensional. People talk about it. But there seems to be a common thread that's expanding that I would describe, for lack of a better way to do it, our future selves, future aspects, other aspects that have come here to do something which we're doing now, and that is to wake up, to take this human soul hybrid species to a higher dimension, possibly the highest dimension, possibly the most expansive part of the universal breath, going to a place the universe has never been before, And I think that that's done by listening to these aspects of us. And I'm seeing a lot of Blu-ray, Christ, Magdalene, Bloodline, Avalon, this common thread where the truth never left the narrative, the true narrative of what happened. But it's still about what you're getting at and what you've been talking about. And that is, you get up every day, and tomorrow can do nothing for you. Yesterday can do nothing to hurt you. Your power is in this moment. what are we going to do today? What are we going to do today? Because one thing that is definitely happening is the universal truth, universal love is not allowing things that are not true to stand anymore. And that's why so many people are leaving relationships, leaving jobs, making huge lifestyle changes, having crazy radio programs, on a wing and a prayer. And that's why you see so many light workers who have been putting it out there, and all in the same boat, not having any money, not having their own place and things like that. But you're also starting to see that they're starting to experience superabundance. And I'm on the cusp of that. I'm not on the cusp. I've just entered the door of that just 10 days ago. Very clear. And as I see it happening and unfolding, if you look at it from a 3D perspective, it's like, oh, he's got nothing, but I see what's happening. And I see other people doing the same thing. So I don't know. It's a great topic line to me. What's 3D? What's 5D? What's this like? This is what I like to talk about with people. What does that look like? See it, touch it, feel it. No one's got all the answers, but if we could just speak what we know and what we feel from our heart, it activates other people. And then the dialogue, so to speak, grows and expands because we're all contributing to this thing that's beyond the Akashic records. It is a living library. It is the new good book. It is the template for future generations and future planets to be formed. This is straight stuff that I've gotten and see through my affiliation with all these great souls like you that I have these conversations with.
That's amazing. I love all that. The last thing that you were saying there, I've heard that whatever is happening on the planet is going to happen for the first time, that we're actually writing. We have this open script, and my friend Crystal Perkins put it to me beautifully one time, and I can't remember what it was because I always try to describe it and I butcher it. But she described it wonderfully, but it was basically like we have an open slate of this possibility to create through our collective free will, this planet of, let's say, 5D, new earth, abundance, whatever. We have that ability, and we can only do it together. You have to do it individually first. You got to walk to the other side. And when I'm talking the difference between 3D and 5D, awake or asleep, partially, and I'd love to hear your feedback too, is like, I've been trying to identify this, for people so I can explain it, but like, what are your values and what are your beliefs? And so, when you're in 3D, it's survival, right? It's competition, it's fear-based. In the 5D, it's faith-based, whatever that is. It doesn't need to be, the solar cosmic Christ or Buddha or whatever. You just have a faith. You are more about collaboration than competition. And you listen more to that inner voice. You don't squash the inner voice. And then I think that you also have the idea to accept shadow or negative feedback. And then you're working on the idea of not putting people down and just accepting the feedback and moving forward. So you have an idea of your own self-responsibility, what you do and what you're attracting, and making an impact and honoring yourself. And you said something, honoring your higher self, filling up your own cup, figuring out who you are. And one of the expressions that I use is like, you're going through a forest and we need to figure out every character in the forest. And right now, this matrix or belief system has conditioned us to all be a duck. And we have this kind of evil type character, and they're like putting this duck suits on everybody. And they're like, yo, everybody's a duck. You know what I mean? And just like follow this thing, right? And meanwhile, they got us going to the machines that are destroying our home, and just demoing where we live. And then the awake ones take off that duck suit. We're like, whoa, actually I always use beaver. I can't get past that, but I'm a beaver. I'm going to chop down the trees, right? And it's like, I love chopping down trees. Now, first you don't really know, but you're like sniffing the tree, you're getting it, you take a little nibble, and you're like, I love this. And then the forest starts to work together. And just because you have understood you're a beaver, you're like, hey man, you might not be a beaver, but I want you to be you. And meanwhile, you're this glorious elk underneath a duck costume pretending to be a duck, because that's the trap trying to bring you in that illusion. That matrix is like, and they've got like all this wood on your back to like, take it to the sawmill or whatever. And the beaver's just like, yo man, you just got to figure out who you are. And I want to support you with that. And I know that it looks like we don't have any money because we can't go to this little coffee shop that they have coffee and food tokens. But if you go over here to where the actual forest is, spirit, God, nature, we actually have everything that we need, and we actually know how to survive in here. And when more of us come over, it's just going to be more collaborative, more cooperative, more abundant. But you have to take that off yourself, and you actually need to start taking the action. And it doesn't happen overnight. Don't make it like that for yourself. Don't be like switch and it's all. If you have a job, keep your job. Just think about what it is you prefer to do, what lights you up, what you could let go of, what you could do to contribute, what is holding you back. Is it real? And start making those steps.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And a few things come to mind. One is, which I think has been a challenge in light worker circles for at least, since, I don't know, it seems like since like March, April, there was a lot of competition. Was a lot of masculine energy flexing its muscles. It was interesting to watch because I think that masculine energy rising has affected all of us, and does affect all of us. There's a lot of illusion in it, but there's also the flip side of that. There's a lot of power, creator ability in the 5D plus masculine, the real masculine energy. So getting back to what you're saying, first of all, if something makes you uncomfortable, we're all learning now and understanding that it's not about that something, it's about me. If something makes me uncomfortable, pisses me off, makes me feel sick inside, whatever it is, there's something in me that needs to be healed. If somebody says to me, so-and-so did this and so-and-so did that, I'm not really looking at so-and-so that supposedly did this or did that or said this or said that. I'm looking at the person telling me that thinking, okay, why are you telling me this? Why are you telling me this? And if it makes me uncomfortable, I take it on myself. If it's something that I'm like, that's none of my business, that's not my circus, that's not my monkey, I just keep on going down the road. So going back to what you were saying about processing the negative stuff and all that, and also how do you navigate the 5D, I think that's how you put fuel in your tank, is every time something comes in, you get uncomfortable. Morgan taught me this over a long period of time. You deal with it and you move on, and you just keep thriving. The second thing I wanted to say too, along the lines of what you're talking about, is every time we have an energetic shift individually, we are contributing to the collective expansion. So if you look at it, for instance, like something like, say there's a door, like the door right here, that we've had an illusion that it's there. The first person that goes through that door and pulls off the duck suit and sees that they're a beautiful elk or whatever, the first person that does that door is now open, and other people start going too. And that's really what's happened with Soulogy. Soulogy is its own energy. Morgan came 12 weeks ago. We were there about a week. We get a visit from the you, me, we, and it, a mutual divine episode, if you will. We're shown this big tree, this big gold tree, like a tree of life, big gold tree. And we said, we were told this is Soulogy, that people that come together generate a third energy, okay? And that third energy is a golden child. And our divine love, as caretakers of that energy, we feed that into the tree, and it bears golden fruit. And it just keeps going, it just keeps going. The flower of life, it just keeps going. That energy collaborates with your energy, and it just keeps going and going and going. I think Soulogy is a representation on a micro level of our universal energy in this transition. And there's many, many Soulogy energies out there. It's just a word. We have to use these words, and here we go again, right? But the bottom line is that create. That means creativity you can apply to any part of your life. I got a problem. Well, if you look at it from a 3D, okay, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? A cognitive process, it keeps you there on first base. You can't get to second base or 5D or 6D or whatever, still tied to but if you look at it from a creative standpoint, go into meditation, ask, like you were talking about, ask and let it go. Ask and know, let it go. Whatever these processes and modalities that are helping any of us, we connect with that 5D, that creative, intuitive, spontaneous, imaginative, pure, raw, innocent, genuine part of us, and the answers come, and the events come, the energy comes to us. Whatever it is that we need is happening. More and more people are seeing that. And so I think it's important that we remember that the act, the thought, the words of one unique and equal soul impact the entirety. It doesn't matter if you're on the front pages of the global news or you're talking to a friend on a radio show. You know, that impact is universal. We can't see that as a human being, but we definitely can see it from our higher aspects.
Awesome. Yep. Love it. Love all of it. I think, all right. So with the creative pure intention, I think that's the piece, you know, that's the ultimate. Like when we're creating, no matter what, if you're going out there and you're living in the 3D, you're creating something, you're probably just creating for another entity. And if you look at a corporation, it's actually a corporate entity, like its own being. And so I've heard, and, you know, gone through, you know, the quantum realms of a few, you know, courses and things like that. But one of the guys that definitely believe in, you know, he talks about the corporation as the entity. So Nike, Coca-Cola, all those things. Once that engine starts running, it's an actual entity with energy and it wants to survive. And so like whatever you're building with Soulogy, you've built it on this pure intention of whatever that idea was for you, but then it goes beyond you. You're birthing an idea, and that's coming from source, from you. And if you're in survival mode, if you're in, just fear-based survival, you need to figure out an entity that can go take some things. It's not really, sometimes it's service-based, and it may start service-based, but then because you in your mind need to acquire as much shit as you can, that entity, like a dog, you could have a lovely pit bull or a terrible pit bull because you told that pit bull that you need to go bite other things and protect things. And so now that entity, as your business is going and it's ravaging whatever it can to get more power for you. But that switch is coming from you. It's your soul, your entity saying, you know what, this is our service. This is the good we're doing. And then you talk about super abundance. That's where it comes from. How much can we help through this idea, you know, through this expression? And it takes a little bit of time. So I think that that's such an important aspect of realizing that the business or the thing that you're doing as an entity, it's like an energy. It is a third party, 100% for real.
It is. Yeah, we actually, from that moment that I was describing, actually communicate with it. We connect with it. It speaks to us. It tells us what not to worry about and what to work on, whatever. I mean, it is a separate energy. But there are these are happening all the time. I mean, you know, I've seen a friend of ours, another couple, Ryan Aguilar, my good friend here in Houston, who does this incredible sacred geometry. All right, it just started coming to him a year ago. This is his main line from the infinite. And so him and his partners started collaborating, and it went to another level. It created a third energy. So we asked him, could you do one for Soulogy? And it's the most incredible thing you've ever seen. I mean, but the way I saw it was their third energy and this third energy came together. And so there's all these aspects involved in this masterpiece, this incredible thing he did. Just mind-blowing, you know, this with the Vesica Pisces, two circles coming together, tree of life above, below, all this stuff, all this intricacy was created not just by a man asking another man to do something, but this energy of these two couples that formed another energy in their work that then collaborated together to take it to a higher level. So these are the things that are occurring everywhere. I think this month is going to be really big. I'm following spirit, the you, me, we, and it right now. I'm in a hotel room in my hometown. I've got a few $100 in Soulogy. We've got a festival planned a week from Friday that we don't have any. We have a space, but we don't have any resources. We're just going to do it. We also have friends around the world, and we're going to be talking about this. We've got Amanda Lawrence over in Glastonbury at the tour with her friends, Des Greensoul, JoJo, and a few other people. We've got Katie Indicrow in Nova Scotia. We've got Unity Grace in Vancouver Island. We're going to talk to Sandra Walters at Shasta. We're going to talk to Shakina Rose in Sedona. We're going to talk to our friends in Hawaii, Lisa Transcendence Brown. And the whole idea is over this period we've received, Unity, myself, Amanda, other people are writing about it, this period of around the 12th of this month throughout the 15th, there's an eclipse and there's just a new moon, there's just some stuff happening, but we're being told there's a opportunity here to connect the grid around the world. So that 3-day period, I'm going to broadcast continuously and just keep bringing people in. One comes off, we'll bring another one on, and just follow this non-guaranteed 5D transitionary method of hanging onto a rope and saying, okay, I'm with you. Let's go, Geronimo, like Tarzan climbing or swinging through the jungle. But it seems to be taking form beyond the individual now, collaborations such as this, where you just jump in, because really knowing is knowing that you can only do one thing, step into the unknown. Nothing we got from where we came from is going to help us. I mean, it's going to help us to a point, but in order to expand, we have to leave the old belief systems. We have to leave the old patterns and behaviors, and we have to create. And that's what I believe we're doing, that you referred to earlier. I believe that we're creating the next chapter in the Akashic records, maybe. I don't know how you want to put it. Something like that.
That's amazing. Yeah, I would put it like that. That's how I've heard it too. And I like when you said there, you're like, I'm putting on this festival. I got $100. Like, you know, I don't know how I'm going to do it. I'm just going to do it. And that's the idea. That's working with spirits. Like, that's how anything was made. And if you look at any super successful business guy, you know, the McDonald's guy, is it Ray Kroc or whatever his name is? You know, the KFC guy, they failed continuously all the time.
That's right.
Failure, you need to understand, is an actual part of the process. Nobody just went out there and, you know, I use skateboarding as the example. I don't know anybody, and if somebody has, it just landed a kickflip first try. Most people had to try that millions of times. You know, maybe a couple people on the planet land first. But if you're doing anything that matters, failure is a necessary, important, and can't skip step part of creating the thing that you want. Embrace it and love it and do it anyways. You know, and just keep doing it, because you only fail when you give up. So give yourself something that you actually care about and enjoy, and do it anyway, because you will be totally fine. And the one thing that I wanted to ask you and touch on, I think that the one thing that I like to bring to the attention of people, because you know, sometimes they talk on the podcast and it's like 5D and aliens or angels or whatever. People are like, oh my God, like I've never seen that. Is it Archons, or is it Anunnaki, or is it the Sumerian tablets, or is it you were in the pyramid? Like, do you see these things? And I like to bring it down to something that's really grounded, practical, that anybody can understand. And so, you know, I'll kind of make a statement that you can kind of share on, but you had this experience, you know, you got the cosmic Christ as your interpretation. Super, let's say 5D mystical. It's Dr. Joe Dispenza say a mystical experience. You're sitting, you're like, holy crap, look at that. That's nuts. And you have it. Now, I'm going to assume like you don't feel like that's a special, like this is me only, and now I can go to a big building and everybody can follow me, and I'm going to show you how to find spirit in God. It's just something that happened that anybody, it could happen to anybody. We all have that access, and it was just for you to have a wink. So maybe it could be like, why do you think that happened? And my guess is because you've been asking, you've been on the path, and that seems to why it happened, but you can clarify. But more importantly, how do we as an individual connect with this, you know, higher state? You know, you've got God, Buddha, you've got angels, you've got the higher realms, you've got the ETs that are helping, you know, and people say the blue avians or the Ray or the Lemurians or whatever the case is. You know, I don't know anybody that calls them and then they come into their home and they have a tea, right? And then they just describe how they do. But maybe, you know, maybe there's some people, but I think that everybody has that access. And so how do we access that information in a useful way so that if somebody hasn't, because my fear is that someone's like, oh, I haven't had that experience, so I don't know, and I'm not special and I can't have it. And that's not the idea. The idea is that thing does happen. It is intense. But, you know, it could probably happen to you, but that's not the actual point of anything. It's just a byproduct. So I'm hoping you could speak on that.
Well, the universe doesn't have a language. It communicates. That's why we get 1111 synchronicities and, oh, I ran into this person at the right time, or, oh, hey, I know you from somewhere. I met two ladies yesterday here when I checked in. And I walked in and I'm like, I know y'all. So it was like a super deja vu. You know, I mean, anything you can do, I can do. Anything I can do, you can do. I love the question. because how do you do that? And I go back to when I started. I started out 7 years ago with the traumatic event. So I would make that point number one. The universal force is pushing you into this universal isolation, which can look one way for one person, one way for another. All of our pain is the same proportionate to our life experience. So every experience is the same. Bottom line is that it is all about you. It's not about what you think about what happened to me and this and that. My point is that how did I start to connect? I think we're all been there, in and out, whatever. But if I look back to what happened, it was the curiosity, it was the questions that I asked the universe. So at that time, from where I was with my knowledge of religion and philosophy, which was pretty, a lot of books read, well over 1,000 books read at that point, I said, as I started connecting, which again, you don't call anyone up and they just come. I mean, I'm sure it happens for some people. So I started to have these experiences with souls that had disincarnated. And I'm like, okay. And I had a few other things like the Jesus in the tree deal, that actually physical manifestations happened to me. But again, I knew that they weren't like making me special. It was just the universe trying to get through to me. So the way it worked for me was I laid on a couch, and at that point in time with my awareness, not having any type of dialogue with the Jesus essence since I was 8 or 9 years old, had that experience in the trees maybe, but that was that. I laid down and I thought, okay, if I have this happening, I have this ability to see through the veil or whatever the case is, what about Jesus? How does that fit? And then boom, there he was. And then boom was another. And then there was these 6 ascendeds, and then there was these 3 spirit guides. As time went on, I realized that I embodied these things, and it was me. It was me. I'm casting everything out there right now that I'm seeing with divine purpose. As a human, we try to understand everything, but how do you expand your connection to the universal? I think absolutely by dealing with your own shift, dealing with the things that make you uncomfortable. I learned 3 things as soon as I hit the streets. Don't lie, don't make excuses, and don't blame other people or other things. It doesn't matter if it's a circumstance or a consequence. It's all the same thing. What matters is where you're at and where you're going. So on a personal level, I was going through a lot of trauma. Why did this happen? I'm a good man. Why did that happen? Why did this happen? Why did that happen? And I had to get past that. I had to take responsibility for myself in the moment. I had to get rid of all the labels and successes and failures from the past and say, this is who I am today. I'm a homeless 50-year-old man who likes to dance in the black clubs at night. And I'm holding the angels in one hand and the devils in the other, and they're all the same thing. I don't understand this. And it was that roller coaster we've all been on. But how do you do it? The only thing I've ever seen, and even in myself, that people that think they don't do it, or they think, oh, that person does this and I can't do that, it's a block. And that block, when you get right down to it, is rooted in fear. And fear, when you get right down to it, is the programming. So how do you clear it? And there's a lot of different modalities and techniques to do that. But I think you are the captain of your own ship. You're your own healer. You're a magician, an alchemist. You're all powerful. You're tapped into the Akashic. And you do it by asking, I guess is another way I'd put it. By asking. Anything you need, ask. Because that message has been prevalent through the entire trip, and it was hard for me to receive. And I think it's hard for a lot of us to receive blessings and love because of our own place that we're at on the scale of self-love. But I've always been told, and it's always worked, if you need something, ask. And it's working with more and more frequency now. Yeah.
Amazing. Yes, I love all that. And I think that, as a really powerful experience and really powerful lesson, because while you were talking, I queued up, I think it's like Matthew 7:7. I don't know how to Google it, but it just says, ask and it will be given to you, seek and you will find, knock and the door will be open to you. Yeah. And what you're talking about is what you did. It's like, I don't know, like I didn't do this. It's not like you called up Jesus experience or called up these things. You're asking, you're seeking, you're actually looking. And a lot of people aren't actually seeking, actually looking, actually asking. And that is all that is required, is to humbly seek and to humbly ask and to humbly want to know. And you're going to get your own experience. And, you know, and what you learned on the street is super important, right? That's like, you know, Enlightenment 101, but we live in this like illusion where everybody's lying and making excuses and blaming others. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and
it's like crazy town.
It's like if the words out of your mouth are you or them, like you or they,
yeah.
You know, I mean, and that's the thing about the ascension. It's an all or nothing proposition. You can't have your cake and eat it too in the ascension. The ascension takes no prisoners. You know, so it's not going to let any of the bullshit last. Nothing false can last. You know, if you're in a relationship and that relationship is not based on pure divine love, pure equality. There is no credit debit system here. There's you do this and I'll do that because I'm weak here and you're strong. No. It's not like that. It's pure unconditional love at its core. If it's not, you're going to be booted out, or it's going to be elevated, or something's going to happen. That's what these energies are doing now, more and more and more and more. So, you know, I think if we focus on ourselves, to thine own self be true, okay, you know, put it 100,000 different ways. If you look at the Golden Rule, for instance, the Golden Rule goes back to all the religious sacred texts. They have all said it, Confucius to the Bibles and all that. So what does that really mean? You know, cause and effect, yin yang. What goes around comes around. What I see in myself is going to come back to me. I have, on my journey through through the universe, helping me in so many ways, and having a beautiful divine goddess who's been connected for 20 years, teach me a lot of sacred wisdom, you know, take me through a lot of things. You know, we've gone through an organic experience. We've been conditioned. We have all different things try to stop us. It hasn't stopped us. It can't stop us. And the more faith we put in ourselves, the more we listen to ourselves, the more we focus on ourselves, it simultaneously mirrors us in our shared consciousness. And that's the most beautiful merging we could actually have. The best thing you can do for the collective is take care of your shift. Take care of yourself. What makes you uncomfortable, don't talk about that person. Talk about, why does it make me uncomfortable? It's not about them, it's about me. There's something in me, and that's the curiosity of the soul. That's the expansion of the soul. That's how you create a more clear line of communication with the universal. And not only that, as you clear yourself and you elevate, everything around you does the same. And so many people, even in the 3D storyline of what's important, what's a value, what's a virtue, what's the pure happiness, it's love. Everybody wants that partner. Everybody wants that equal. Everyone, and it's true. It works. It's real. It's the basis of creation, creator, of the universal. It's how it works. And it's there. But when you clean up your house, that will come to you as well. You know?
Yeah, man. I you know, even if the entire podcast was that last few paragraphs, I 100% resonate. And, you know, I think that the knowledge isn't complicated. It's just challenging to do with what we believe and what we're in. But at the same time, it isn't. It really comes down to a choice. And if we have the strength and courage to make a different choice, to just reflect and go in and to ask for help from spirit. You know, David Lombard says, spirit can't read your mind. You got to ask out loud and you got to write it down. So that's one thing that I share with people, but I think that it can communicate telepathically through prayer, but just ask for what you need. I need help with this, or I don't know where I'm going. Can I please have some guidance? Just some basic stuff. You know, with going through this, I know that this is going to be the first of many because there's so much amazing wisdom and beauty in that podcast. I hate to have to run because I gotta do some things, but let's definitely do it again. I love and I appreciate what you're doing and your commitment to the path and sharing your your authentic truth. That's all we can really do in minding your shift. Is there anything that you wish that I had asked that you want to talk about before we or that you want to leave the listeners with?
No, man, I think it's all been great. I think it's perfect. I appreciate the opportunity. I haven't done too many of these. I haven't really done very many at all, but I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it. And all I would say is that I want to thank anyone and everyone who's contributed energy, love, resources to Soulogy. It's gotten us here. I'm still here. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to keep putting it out there. And I don't worry about the things that seem to stand in the way, like a bad internet signal today, which we haven't had a problem. So, thank you. Endless gratitude, love, respect, honor, and reverence for you and for everybody out there. And let's just all keep going. And everything's all right. Everything's all right. We're past the tipping point now. We're past the tipping point, but you handle your shift. I'll handle mine. I'll meet you in the middle. Don't project on me. I won't project on you. And the most important code that the universe will speak to you is what comes out of your mouth. I've learned that. So I'm not saying I'm right. I'm not a yogi and I'm not a guru. I'm just saying I know what it's like many people. The hard loving of the soul is straight up. The truth is the truth. And it hurts sometimes, but when it does, it doesn't last very long. And it sure feels good and liberating when you let it go. So
amazing, brother. I appreciate all that. Yes, you are still here. And where can people find more about you? Facebook?
Well, we got a Soulogy group. Facebook.com. We got most all the program. Well, really all the broadcasting's done off my personal page, Todd Medina. We also have a Soulogy group, and we have a Soulogy One Studios page on Facebook, and we have a Soulogy One Studios YouTube. So that's pretty much it right now. But we're coming out with some more stuff, And next time we talk, we can talk about that because it's gonna be, and I'm gonna be talking to you about it anyway.
Yeah. Well, we're connected, man. Well, I love it. I appreciate you and all the work you're doing. Thanks everybody for listening, spending some time with us, and lots and lots of love out there. Thank you so much, Todd.
All right, brother. I'll see you later. Thank you.
See ya.